Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. I'm your host, Michelle Berard, founder and CEO of Michelle A. Berard, LLC. And I'm super happy to share this hour with you, where we examine all those places where spirit meets life and the joys and challenges that may bring. You guys know I like to start by thanking Ms. Beverly Black and Tribe Family Channel for helping me create this space for us. Tribe Family Channel is home to an assortment of thought-provoking shows that explore life, spirit, business, and culture, including The Woman at the Well, hosted by Ms. Beverly Black herself. Somewhere in the Middle was born on Tribe Family Channel, and though we have grown onto our own platform, we are ever grateful and loyal to our roots. To paraphrase an African proverb, we are here only because we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. I want to say thank you to my guests on the August 18th show, authors Rufus Stevens and Connie Johnson. You can connect with Rufus and Connie at their author websites, conniejohnson.authorsites.co and rufusstevens.authorsites.co. You can find our complete show archives, including the August 18th show, at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. I also want to shout out Bruce George of the Genius is Common movement, which encourages all of us to embrace our inner genius and share it with the world. This is a really important message, and you guys know I think we should share this with the kids, but it's not just for young people. Sometimes we adults need to be reminded that the world needs our genius. Learn more about the Genius is Common movement at www.geniusiscommon.com. Now, this month's guest helps professionals and business owners optimize their LinkedIn profiles to enhance their careers and grow their businesses. Daniel Alfon is the author of Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success. Daniel joined LinkedIn in early 2004 and publishes articles, interviews, and exclusive content about advanced LinkedIn strategies for clients and subscribers to his website, which is danielalfon.com. So I'd like to welcome Daniel Alfon to Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard. Daniel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Michelle, my pleasure to be somewhere in the middle with you. Thank you.
Well, I'm really excited about you being here because you do something different from anyone I've spoken to in my 7 years of doing this show. So this is really cool. And I think what you've got to share with people is really valuable information. But I like to start my interviews with 2 questions so we can kind of understand who you are. So if you're ready.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Daniel Alfon, who are you and how did you become who you are today?
Thank you very much. I'm a husband, father, and LinkedIn consultant. And networking is what brought me to everything I have professionally. Mm-hmm. People I met along the way, people I served along the way, and I was privileged to keep in touch with them, and they helped me open doors to all sorts of opportunities.
Now, I'm going to ask you about this because maybe it's a generational thing, maybe it's a regional thing. I'm from down south in the US, and I think it's unusual to hear men start out with, I'm a father and a husband type thing, and then put their careers afterwards. And you have a lovely accent, so I'm going to assume you're not from the southern US. Tell me about that.
Thank you very much. I was listening to the episode you released with Nate Turner, mm-hmm. and I think that is a must listen for any parent. I'll say this, I related to it as a father, but I think mothers can relate to it as well. And perhaps that's part of the reason I started by saying that. Obviously, Nate's journey has been different from mine, but I agree with many of the facts that you discussed, that we basically emulate the environment we grew up as children. And our children are already in their 20s. So I can't write those letters to them, but that gave me an idea to perhaps consider writing those letters for the unborn grandchild we may have. So thank you for that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And if you haven't spoken to Nate or emailed him or anything, I will let him know that he inspired that. I just think that's really fascinating. You're like the, third, I think you're like the third gentleman I've spoken with who started out that way. And that, I feel that wouldn't have been the case, say, 15 years ago. And I wonder if something has changed in the way that we perceive ourselves as working people, as business people. Where you?
Yeah, you're right. Perhaps COVID has also changed some of the perceptions we have, because we started working from home a lot more than before. So the barriers are less rigid, and the Chinese walls are less rigid. And as a person, Michelle, you're more than your job. Your job is important, but it's not the only thing. And maybe it's legit for guys too to acknowledge that.
I think it's excellent. And how did that impact, because like you said, your kids are grown, my kids are grown too. How did the pandemic kind of shift your perspective in terms of your business?
Cool. So the most important aspect for me was that travel was removed from my day-to-day career, and I had a lot more time. And I watched our 18-year-old, 17-year-old child grow, because I was with him. He was joining school from Zoom, and so was I. And I decided to do something more meaningful with that time that it was almost a gift, because we had no idea at the beginning it would take so much long and so much time. And I think some of the conversations we've had would not have been possible without us being around at home.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's great too, because that also gave you time to work on your business in a different way, I would imagine. If you didn't have to do all that traveling, how did that shift your business?
You're absolutely right. I started working even more with US customers. I'm based south of Tel Aviv, Israel.
Okay.
So the weather is close to Atlanta's, but we're we're a couple of thousand miles ahead. And that enabled me to work with people from all over the place and all over the world. And people had no longer an expectations for you to meet them face to face. And that also meant you could jump on a call much faster and start working with people and start helping them much faster. And even when with COVID perhaps behind us, things have changed in our perception and our wish to have some hybrid career may stay with us even longer.
And were you in this business when the pandemic started, or is this a new venture for you? How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, I've joined LinkedIn early in 2004. And I started using it professionally in 2006. Back then, I held a quota carrying position, and a significant part of my time, Michelle, was dedicated to find the name of the person within the organization I needed to reach out to. And one evening, LinkedIn just showed me the name of the purchasing manager and the name of the owner and the name of the anyone I needed to reach out to. So it enabled me to beat my quota. And then I decided to see what's under the hood. And then, friends ask you to train their sales force and train their staff. And at one point, I decided to specialize and to drop everything else. That's been, I published my book in 2014. So I would guess at least 15 years is pure LinkedIn consulting. What I'm doing primarily is pure LinkedIn consulting.
Wow. So what exactly do you help your clients with LinkedIn?
Ask them all sorts of questions about their business or about their objectives. Some of them you help authors, both of fiction and nonfiction. And it's simple questions about what they would consider success. Because having worked with lots of authors, some of them would like to impact many people. Some of them would like to have to be on more stages. Some of them would like to offer programs. Some of them would like to gain revenues from the book itself. And until we define the purpose or the objective you have, we can't continue with the tools. And LinkedIn is simply a tool. It's a very powerful tool. It's 850 million users, and since you hit record, 1,000 people have signed up. Michelle, every second, 3 people sign up.
Wow.
But it's still a tool. So you need to know, what would you consider as an objective or success for you, and LinkedIn needs to serve that purpose. If you want more people sign up to your author platform or to your website or your newsletter, then LinkedIn has to serve you in that way.
So maybe we should back up. A lot of people, especially authors, tend to want to get a Facebook page and all of this stuff. How is LinkedIn beneficial to them?
Okay, I'll start by saying that for many authors, when they Google their own name, they will see their LinkedIn profile tops the list. That's not necessarily the case for their Facebook page or their Facebook profile. So you need to manage it, and you can't let LinkedIn manage it for you, because many people will visit that profile, whether they find you via Google or via LinkedIn search or anything else. And the minimum is to present your book in a professional way to the LinkedIn community. And that shouldn't take too much of an effort. It could be done in minutes, in less than an hour. If you have even just a cover, the name of the book, and something like that, you can set it up in minutes. There are many more advanced things you can do on LinkedIn, but that's the minimal thing I would suggest.
Okay. And some people say you're not supposed to advertise on LinkedIn. So what is your general approach? I know it can vary depending on what people want to do, but what's the general rule of thumb in terms of how we should be thinking about using LinkedIn?
Cool. So perhaps, Michelle, the most important thing I would suggest is to forget about the way other people use the platform and to focus on the best way for you to leverage the platform. And that means that if you're an author, you're in business, then the fact that LinkedIn has a job search capability is not relevant for you. And you need to think of the LinkedIn platform as a website. I didn't say your only website. You may have another website, and that could help people discover your website. That could help more people go to michellebarra.com. That's the simplest way to treat it. Think of it as a website that needs to convert your ideal reader into reaching out to you.
Now, you said some keywords there. No, because one of the things that I struggle with authors sometimes is people want to write books because they feel like they've got this intense message they want to get out, or they want to entertain, or they have this story they have to share. But a lot of times they don't realize they're actually starting a business. And LinkedIn can really offer some good opportunities, right, for connecting with people who can help advance the business, maybe other resources that they could use in the business, whether that's editors or graphic designers or other people they can link up with. So what kinds of things do you think people should be concentrating on in terms of their priorities when they're thinking about it from a business perspective?
Excellent. The secret no one told me when I wrote my book was that the book is just the beginning. Just putting there on Amazon will not change most of the authors' lives, and we need to think of it as a way to gain more exposure and more revenues via something else. It could be speaking gigs, it could be programs, it could be all sorts of services we may offer. And you nailed it, because many authors would primarily think of LinkedIn as a way to get more readers. It's great, but it's not the only game in town. In many cases, you could actually leverage LinkedIn to find more people who would show your book to way more other readers than themselves. And that could be editors and cover designers, and that could be bloggers, and that could be podcasters. And you could use LinkedIn as a way for you to amplify your message and not just speak to the reader themselves. The readers themselves are important, but there are a lot of communities on LinkedIn that could help you get the message across to the readers themselves. Mm-hmm. There's a B2B element in your in LinkedIn that's very dominant. And if your book has any B2B context, it makes a lot more sense to use it in that way instead of trying to find the readers via LinkedIn. Who could show your book to other people? It could be HR professionals. It could be managers. It could be a local chamber of commerce. It could be all sorts of things depending on the topic of your book. If your book is a self-help book, then you could also find a way for you to get into more stages and more podcasts via LinkedIn. And there would be a stage where you could explain about the message and how you got into it and how it can help people.
Very cool. But now LinkedIn looks like it's got its, well, just like social media in general, looks like it's got its priorities, right? So we want you to connect with people and all that kind of stuff. But maybe your business has different priorities or metrics, things that need to be looked at. What kinds of things are there differences there that you see?
It's a great question. Yes. And I don't think LinkedIn has to set your objectives. Michelle, you have. In some cases, the LinkedIn suggestion would make sense, and that's fine. But if there's any misalignment between what LinkedIn suggests and your priorities, forget about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really the tool. You can even think of it as a black box. Mm-hmm. What is your objective? Is your objective to get more people learn about your book or learn about the services that you offer? Then how will you turn those connections into revenues? Mm-hmm. It's a very simple question, but we can have lots of different answers to that very quickly, either quality or quantity. Mm-hmm. Quality means you connect only with people you know well, and then you run an advanced search and you find someone who's an ideal person for you to reach out. It could be an influencer, it could be a blogger, it could be another podcaster, it could be someone else. And if you connect with people you know well, you're able to reach out to the person you're connected with and ask them whether they feel comfortable making that introduction. And if they do, Michelle, you will gain the attention of the influencer thanks to that person's name, not your name, not my name, but the person in between. And that's the quality approach. The quantity approach means you need to get as fast as possible to 30, 35, or 40,000 connections in order to gain exposure. If you're only starting on LinkedIn, it's frankly not realistic to go that route because it will take you years. LinkedIn has now limited the number of connections requests you can send on every week. So it would take you a lot of time to get there. And perhaps the worst thing to do would be to try and have it both ways, or to be somewhere in the middle. Just for this, you need to be somewhere in the middle for everything but the LinkedIn connection strategies, because being somewhere in the middle means you no longer know your connections without having enough exposure. So pick one and ask yourself, if you had to pick one, Michelle, would you like to be the best connected or the most connected?
So most connected might work best on something like Facebook or Twitter, it sounds like.
Yes, ma'am.
But LinkedIn, we want to focus on quality, although not necessarily quantity.
You're absolutely right. Because if I see that we share a mutual connection, then what I think of that person is going to impact you. Say I look at your profile and I see Sam Fiara, and I was connected to him. So obviously, he was a guest on Somewhere in the Middle. And if I reach out to him, he will be able to answer basic questions about you. And maybe it will land a meaningful conversation. It will mean we'll have a meaningful conversation with him. But imagine something else. I would see Sam and 5 other people, and you would not necessarily know those 5 people. Mm-hmm. Then, Michelle, you will not be there when I look at those 6 people to say Sam is the go-to person. You need to ask Sam. I will see 5 other people. And if I ask Jane Doe and she says, Michelle, who? That's not the answer we want. We want people who can answer basic questions about us and make the introduction if we're into a quality network. It's tempting to go for both, but it's a dangerous path.
So does this get into that saying where they say your network is your net worth?
You could have 200 connections and grow your business thanks to LinkedIn, and you might have 5,000 connections without those connections being translated into a nickel or a dime. So these are, for me, these are vanity metrics, and the metrics we need to focus on are the real life metrics. It could be the downloads of our book. It could be the engagement we gain as author to have a book tour or to be a guest on podcasts such as this or something else. So the metrics that count are not the LinkedIn metrics. It's the metrics that count for you. It could be traffic to a website. It could be discovery calls where people say, I struggle with editing. Perhaps you could help me. And if you're using LinkedIn, if you haven't used LinkedIn for that, and you have 8 or 10 new inquiries, and some of them will be translated into clients, then you know that LinkedIn has helped you grow your business by 25%. That makes sense. And if you see only the LinkedIn metrics growing and you see nothing in the bank side, so you're not doing the right thing. Forget about the LinkedIn metrics, treat it as a black box, focus on the metric that matters to you.
And that gets into just general concepts about marketing anyway, right? So anytime you do anything in marketing, you're testing, you're measuring, and then you're responding to what you see, right?
Yes, LinkedIn hasn't changed the way our minds are wired, and every now and then there's a new shiny object and people tell you that it's changed everything. I can't say it has changed everything. It has saved time. It's reorganized the information we see, but it hasn't changed the way we need to know, like, and trust the person we'd like to work with.
Mm-hmm. And now LinkedIn has a lot of tools. I know every time I go into my LinkedIn account, I see something different that I just didn't notice before. And they may vary at different levels, because there's, of course, the free LinkedIn level. Then there's like, I guess, a job search level. And then there's like a business level. I don't remember all the names. You're the LinkedIn expert. But are there certain tools that someone at the free level could really start to leverage immediately to see some results in their business?
Absolutely. And I actually would not encourage anyone to go and pay for a premium account before making the most out of the free account. Mm-hmm. Most of LinkedIn's members are not paid members. And you can gain a lot of data and clients and exposure thanks to a free LinkedIn account if you know what you're doing. So perhaps we could break it down into 3 simple steps. First step would be to improve or optimize your LinkedIn presence, because your LinkedIn profile is associated with every public action you perform on LinkedIn. You mentioned connections. So if I send you an invitation request, or if I receive an invitation request from you, I will be able to go and visit your profile before deciding whether I accept that invitation or not. So have a look at your profile and make sure it speaks the message you want to tell the world. Can we see your book cover? Can we see the name of the book? Can we even understand you're an author within 5 seconds? Or is it hidden there because you thought it was a job search and you only enter the places you've worked, even though it's not important for you as a business owner, just like you said, or as an author, or even a future author, say working on the book and the book will only be released in 2024. It doesn't matter. That's what you're doing. So the first level would be your presence on LinkedIn, or your profile for most of us. And then the second layer would be a connection strategy, and decide whether you connect with people you know well or not. And then would come the part of the lead generation proper. After your profile is set up and after you're connected with people you know, then you can lay back and ask yourself, okay, how am I going to use this engine? There are many possibilities there. It could be confusing. How can I leverage LinkedIn platform for me to gain more readers? And am I targeting the individual reader, or am I targeting some organization or some brokers that could show my book to other people, or bring me onto the stage for me to explain about the book itself. The problem your book solves could have all sorts of groups on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I know you worked on one specific group, one specific book, I'm sorry, for a lady who wrote a book about how to find nursing jobs. Mm-hmm. So for that lady, the fact that LinkedIn is a powerful job search engine would bring everything in really in a row. She could explain to job seekers how to find nursing jobs. She could use the LinkedIn platform in order for her to find LinkedIn groups where nurses or would-be nurses would be. And there, instead of saying, buy my book, which would be tempting, but not really effective, what she could do, say I go to Amazon and order your book. You would not know my personal details. Amazon is going to hold that information. And I can even browse through the Amazon app and ask Amazon to send me the first chapter of your book. So what you could do is maybe have an extract, maybe 2 pages, or the introduction, or something that would make people understand what the book is about without spilling the beans. Shouldn't be too difficult for everyone to do. And then you would go and promote that passage, or maybe it would be a short video, something that would help people understand there is a way for them to find those nursing jobs. And the easy steps would be 1, 2, and 3. And if you're interested in learning more, then I've got a forthcoming webinars next month that would be free, or you could also buy my book. That's fine. But if you only shove the book down people's throat without them realizing the value of the book, you're not likely to see a lot of new orders.
So it sounds like you're talking about using LinkedIn as part of your marketing funnel.
Absolutely. It should be aligned with your marketing funnel in general, and even in terms of content. I don't think our audience here needs to produce content for the sake of LinkedIn. But if you have good content that is educational and evergreen, say you could help if I'm struggling with editing, and that's the first, let's say it's my first book. So I have all sorts of questions. How can I pick an editor? And what's the best stage to start working with an editor? Is it just when my book is finished, or when my draft is finished, or is it somewhere else? So you could answer those questions in 30 seconds. You've been asked those questions for hundreds of times. How about taking the questions that your ideal readers are struggling with and answering those questions in a way that would help them see that they move, thanks to Michelle, from they've taken a baby step from point A, where they were absolutely clueless, to point B. They only start understanding, but they can look back and say, yes, now I think I've made some progress. Now they would be listening to you when you say, I can show you the steps to C and D and E. And that would be through gated content, or a webinar, or a call, something that would bring them down the funnel, just like you said. Start by offering real advice that would find them in the place they're at right now. And then they would be a lot more interested into, you don't have to sell, they want to buy.
Right. So you're educating.
Yes, ma'am. I think the content that works best is educational, top of funnel, evergreen. If you have, or if you can repurpose or curate content that's educational, you've got a lot more chances of that content being read on LinkedIn, and that content could be a lot more engaging, and people will discover you thanks to that educational content.
So even for fiction authors who may not have an educational book, they could maybe share information about their journey as a writer, the challenges they ran into, and how they overcame them with the writing process.
You know, when I'm listening to you, I think there could be parallels drawn between entrepreneurs and business owners and authors, because the struggles are basically the same. We have a blank page and we're asking ourselves, should I create this or should I create that? Okay, so the fact that it's a fiction book doesn't change the essence of our struggle. We needed to make tough decisions. And we know that every decision we make is going to influence our next steps. And if you're a good writer, as your authors are, then try to describe that author journey as a book. And if your style is a thriller, then try to align it with the way you describe. So I would be, I would turn the pages and want to see how did you make that choice. Or if you find funny stories or children's books, then try to tell the same story from the angle of a child, or something that would be aligned with your style.
That is amazing insight. I love the way you put that, like lean into your genre to tell your personal story, your personal journey. I love that.
Thank you. I think it boils down to, you don't have to become someone else on LinkedIn. Michelle has a real life personality. You don't have to create a new one. You can be the same person you are. And that means if you're an introvert, you don't have to become an extrovert on LinkedIn. You can gain exposure and trust and make more people discover your book with your vulnerability and your frank advice. I was struggling with this. I was struggling with LinkedIn. Should I be here or not? Because you see, everyone is describing only TED Talks and only Academy Awards. And all I've done, is write a book. But I struggled with it. I decided to show you my journey, and that's how it looks like. You don't have to do something else. You have a real life personality. You have a real life style. And reflecting that style is the easiest way to get across to people and to connect with people. If you try to become someone else, it's not really fruitful. And at one point, people will say you're phoning. We don't want that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for that. Because I know a lot of people, LinkedIn in particular, I think is a little intimidating for people because it's the professional social network. And so I think that's really great advice. So if you had a brand new person coming onto LinkedIn today, what 3 things do you think they should do getting started on LinkedIn?
Cool. My first suggestion, Michelle, would be to try and play with the LinkedIn platform, the app or the desktop, and try to visit 20 to 50 profiles of people who do similar things. So if I were a first-time author, I would simply run a search for authors on LinkedIn. If I'm fiction, I would add some other keyword. If it's nonfiction, I would write something else, and I would look at 30 profiles. And you would be amazed by the variety of things I would see. And that would help me understand, okay, that lady has, like when I look at your profile, you have a very nice banner. When I see your banner, the word book comes alive. I don't mean that everyone has to copy your exact banner, but they see that you have turned your banner into a real life example of a book. And they could do the same thing with their own message. It doesn't have, they have to tweak it. Perhaps the book is only, they're only deciding about the topic of the book, so they can do something else. So first suggestion would be to simply read as many profiles or glance at as many profiles as they can in order to get some good ideas, some people to be inspired by, and some things they don't want to emulate. Something that doesn't work, something that turns them off. It's important for them to understand why that has turned us off and try not to do the same thing. So that could take you as little as 30 minutes. Simply browse and see all sorts of profiles and decide what good ideas could be part of your LinkedIn presence. My second suggestion would be to simply improve and optimize their LinkedIn profile, to make sure it answers the questions they want to answer. It has to mention the book. It has to mention the topic of the book. And the third and last suggestion would be to try and ask meaningful questions say my book is still in the writing process and I'm working with you, I'm still editing. So I have maybe at least a quarter before it's out. But here's a very simple idea. I could tell people I'm working on a book and show them 2 covers or show them 2 titles. And I would simply ask them if they mind either voting or telling us or telling me what works best for them, the orange cover or the blue cover, that technical book title or the emotional one. Mm-hmm. And that's a very nice way to make people aware of the fact that you're writing a book. Instead of saying, you can go to Amazon and pre-order my book, you can make the same message in a more subtle way, and many people will engage with that content. So you'll gain information, you will gain more information about how people treat the book or the cover or the title. It could even improve you in the early stages. You could almost turn LinkedIn into create a community where you'd have alpha readers. Mm-hmm. And you would ask who would be willing to read a chapter and give you some feedback. And many people would be thrilled. Many people will not be. That doesn't matter. If 10 people reach out to you and say, Michel, I'd like to have a look at the chapter, you start building a relationship with them. You can improve your book. And when it's out there, you can thank them and say that you could not have done that without them. And that will also is likely to increase the way they would engage with your book, or they would feel part of your journey. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take too much effort. Everything we mentioned is feasible within minutes. Go there.
I love it. And getting people engaged in that way, they feel like they've got a certain amount of skin in the game.
Yes, ma'am.
And then that makes them want to support you all the more.
Yes. The author's journey is a lonesome one. Mm-hmm. But if we can make people part of that journey, we gain a lot more information without losing anything. We really only get we get richer, and we can gain more insights about what other people think about our books. And our books are not made for us. They're made for the readers. Mm-hmm. And our LinkedIn profiles are not made for us. They're made for our ideal readers on LinkedIn.
So they should scan the other profiles, get an idea of what they like, what they don't like, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. They should engage the folks that they connect with in different ways, particularly if they're trying to promote a book or something like that. And the third thing?
And the second was actually optimize their LinkedIn profile.
Optimize the profile. That's what it was. Optimize the profile. So how do you go about optimizing your profile? That's just kind of figuring out, okay, this is who I want to present or what I want to present about myself. And then making sure that everything on that page points to that. Is that really what optimization is?
Yes, it's partly that. It's deciding that the headline you're going to be using is different from the default headline LinkedIn will show us. That the default headline will be simply the title and the company you're working for. So it could be founder, Urban Books Editors, mm-hmm. Editor LLC. That's fine. But if you want to change it, for example, if you want to say that writing and publishing is also parts of the services you offer, you could tweak your headline and make it about the other parts you want to show. Mm-hmm. And if your book is a self-help book, then you can basically say, I help lady entrepreneurs start their own business, or whatever the book is about. And if you say that you help first-generation American write or publish their books, then the book is there, but it's not just buy my book. This is the system I have. And there are other elements we haven't got into here, the keywords you'd like to include in your profile, because there are billions of searches that are run on LinkedIn. So say I'm running a search for the nursing jobs or the self-help book. How can you make sure that I'm going to find you in page 1 and not in page 125? So there's a whole system to it, but it's not very difficult for the authors to follow. And I think what you mentioned earlier is way more important than anything we discussed. the minute you become an author is the minute you need to understand you're in business. And that you drive the conversation should be different. Everything becomes a tool, and LinkedIn is one tool. It's not the only one. It could be a great way for you to grow your business, but you need to understand that you're in business. Before you understand that, you'll only be transactional about the downloads or the books or one more person. But you can't always come and say, here's my book, buy it. At one point you will feel it doesn't make sense, and most people will not be engaging with that sort of content. So you need to find creative ways to write about it, just like you're doing with your work.
Well, Daniel, you help people with this. How can they get in touch with you to help them with their LinkedIn profiles? How can I get in touch with you to help me with my LinkedIn profile?
Thank you very much, Michelle. They simply go to danielalfon.com. There's a way for them to read articles and go to the store and book a one-on-one or whatever. And if I may ask a very simple question, we can do this in less than 60 seconds. Are you willing to try this with me?
Sure.
Cool. So let me ask you this. What is the link that you would like to promote the most on LinkedIn?
Oh, a specific link. Probably the link to my discovery call.
Excellent. So is that on michellebarad.com?
Well, there are two. There's one on michellebarad.com. That's for something a little different.
Okay.
And because I work with business people and help them kind of systematize what they do. That's the tech geek in me coming out.
Okay.
And then on Urban Book Editor, I have the one for people who have books that they want to get edited or get marketing plans developed for.
Excellent. So is the Urban one the link you want to promote?
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's try to do this live in real time. I'd like you to go to your LinkedIn profile if you can.
Let me do, so you're going to see me looking away, guys, because I'm looking at the other monitor. I love hands-on exercises. You know, I'm a software trainer by background. So I love that.
Thank you very much for playing this dangerous game with me. You can always edit it out, but try to click on Add Profile section when you go to your profile.
Okay. You're going to laugh at me because I go so infrequently that I have to think about where I go. I've forgotten I changed that banner just recently. I like that one. Okay. So Add Profile section.
Yes, ma'am. And then Recommended, the second from the bottom. And the first one should be Add Featured.
Yes.
Again, for our listeners here, we went to your profile. I ask you to click on Add Profile section and then Recommended and then Featured. Are we good to go for the next stage?
Yes, sir.
Good. Can you see a plus sign on the top right?
Yes.
Would you please click on that plus sign and select the third saying Add a link?
Awesome.
Good. Would you mind going to urbanbookeditor.com and find the direct link to the discovery call you'd like people to go to?
Oh my, who knew you could do all this fancy stuff? All right, I've got it.
Excellent. Could you please paste it and click on Add?
Okay.
And just save it.
And I could put in a fancy description and all that. I'm not going to bother.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You can tweak the headline itself. You can also add a description, but what that will do is basically showing a visual link to that page. Anyone visiting your profile will see it pretty fast. And that means more people are going to discover that discovery call, and they will understand faster how you can help them.
All right. So now when I want to view my profile as another person.
So basically what you could have you saved it?
Yes.
Good. So when you scroll, let me show it here. When you go to your profile.
Look at that.
Yeah, okay. So we simply scroll and we see this. And as you said, you can change that. You can say on schedule discovery call. And what happens when I click here is I go to the page you wanted.
Very cool.
And you can change that in 2 months or whenever. You can make your LinkedIn presence aligned with your future needs.
Very cool.
It took you less than a minute to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Guys, don't ever say you don't learn anything on this show. I'm just saying, you always learn something. Our guests are fabulous. Daniel, thank you so much. How can people connect with you personally? If they want to connect with you on LinkedIn or Facebook, all the social medias, how do they do that?
They can really start at danialalfon.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on Twitter or Quora. All they have to do is say the magic word. I was listening to Somewhere in the Middle and I have a question.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel, for being on Somewhere in the Middle with Michelle Berard.
Thank you, Michelle.
That's our show this month, guys. You can reach me online at michelleberard.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Urban Book Editor. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to send in some topics you'd like us to cover on the show. Make sure you tune into the show on October 20th when my guest will be Master Integrative Life Coach Nancy Picard. You can find us once a month on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern at the somewhereinthemiddlepodcast.com. Let's continue the conversation. You guys be good, stay mindful, and remain prayerful. Peace and blessings, y'all.